All right, let's talk about Azure. If you've ever logged into your company's cloud environment and just felt overwhelmed by the chaos, trust me, you are definitely not alone. So today, we're going to drop up a blueprint for taming that cloud, turning it from a kind of wild frontier into a place that's actually well-governed. Let's get into it. You know how it starts, right? It's just a test server here, a new database there. But without any real plan, those little expenses, they just multiply. And pretty soon, you're staring at a bill that makes absolutely no sense for resources that are running that nobody can even account for. And look, it's not just about the money. It's about security. Is your production data really locked down? Are the dev environments properly walled off from everything else? When every single team is just doing their own thing, trying to maintain consistent security becomes this constant, stressful guessing game. So, that's the big question, isn't it? How do you give your teams the freedom to innovate and move fast while also keeping a handle on costs, security, and compliance? The answer isn't about locking everything down. It's about building a smarter framework from the ground up. Let's just call this initial state what it is: the Azure Wild West. Yeah, it's a place with tons of opportunity and expansion, but it's also got no rules, no real structure, and zero predictability. It's messy. I'm willing to bet some of this looks pretty familiar. Security policies are all over the place. Costs are a total mystery until that giant bill shows up. And maybe worst of all, when something breaks, nobody knows who actually owns it. That's what turns a simple compliance audit into an absolute nightmare. Okay, enough about the problems. Let's start talking about the solution. And the first, most foundational piece of our blueprint, the thing that brings order to the chaos, is something called management groups. So what in the world are they? Well, simply put, management groups are basically containers that you put your Azure subscriptions into. And here's their superpower. Any rule, any permission you apply to the container, it automatically flows down and gets inherited by everything inside. It's a game changer. Honestly, the concept is really simple. It's just like using folders on your computer to organize all your files. You use management groups to organize your entire cloud. The whole goal here is to create a logical, easy-to-understand hierarchy for everything you have in Azure. So how do we actually build one of these things? A really good hierarchy doesn't just happen by accident. You have to architect it. So let's walk through a proven, scalable way to do this, starting right at the very top. Every single Azure organization has one of these, right from the start, the tenant root group. This is the top dog, the ultimate container for everything. Any policy you put here, let's say a rule that forbids creating resources in certain countries, is going to apply to every single subscription, no exceptions. So you use it sparingly, but it is incredibly powerful. Okay, right under that root, we're going to create what's called a platform group. Think of this as the central hub for all the services that the entire organization depends on. Things like your centralized logging, your main network connections, security monitoring tools. This is the stuff you lock down tight and manage centrally. Now we get to landing zones. And this is where you start to make the structure look like your actual company. You could create landing zones for different business units like finance or HR, or maybe for different kinds of applications like your internal tools versus your public websites. And finally, inside those landing zones, you have your subscriptions. A subscription is basically where your teams actually go to deploy their resources, their virtual machines, their databases, their apps. This is where the real work gets done. So, how should you organize these subscriptions? This part is key. A really common and frankly powerful way to do it is to give each application its own set of subscriptions, one for production, one for development, and one for testing. This creates a really strong security wall between them, making sure that a mistake in a dev environment can never accidentally take down your live production system. Now, having this great structure is one thing, but actually enforcing the rules of the road is something else entirely. And this is where two absolutely critical tools come into play: Azure policy and role-based access control, or what we all call RBAC. Okay, this is a really, really important distinction, and it's where a lot of people get mixed up. So let's break it down real simple. Azure policy is all about the resources. It defines the rules for what you can build. RBAC, on the other hand, is all about the people. It defines who gets permission to do things. So just think, policy is what, and RBAC is who. Let's make this real for a second. Think of Azure policy as your automatic guardrail.
You can set a rule way up at a high-level management group that says, hey, we're only going to allow these specific cost-effective virtual machine sizes. And that's it. The policy enforces that rule automatically, preventing a massive budget overrun before it can even happen.
And on the flip side, you've got RBAC. This is your security gatekeeper. This is how you give your database team contributor rights to the production database subscription, but you only give the new intern reader access. They can look, but they can't touch. It's how you make sure people only have the access they absolutely need and nothing more. So now that we have all the building blocks, let's just tie it all together with a few core design principles. These are the golden rules for making sure your cloud setup is going to last. It really just comes down to these three things. First, isolate. Keep your environment separate to limit the blast radius if something goes wrong. Second, clarify. Make sure every single resource has a clear owner, so there are no more mystery servers. And third, standardize. Use Azure policy to enforce your rules everywhere automatically. Isolate, clarify, standardize. That's the mantra.
When you put it all together, that logical hierarchy with the enforcement power of policy and RBAC, you get to this. You stop reacting and fighting fires, and you get to a proactive state where your cloud is secure, cost-effective, and ready to scale, simply by its very design.
And that really leaves us with just one last question to think about. Right now, in your organization, is your cloud a well-governed asset that's helping you move faster, or is it a chaotic liability that's just creating risk and unpredictable costs? The blueprint is right here. Now it's time to start building.